Hello everybody, my name is Adam Gorb. I'm Head of School of Composition here at the Royal Northern College of Music, and welcome. Before I talk about details of what happens here for composers, for composition students here at the RNCM, I want to pose a question, which is, why do you want to compose? And I think there's only one answer. I could give various possible theories because I want to express myself, because I want to explore areas of musical and sonic thought that I haven't done before or other people haven't done before. But there is only one main answer, and I think that is this, and that is I compose because I want to hear what I've written. As a certain famous composer once said, I am my favorite audience. I write because I want to hear it. Of course I write because I want to communicate. I want my music to spread out to the world. I want as many people as possible who care to make the effort to sit down and not do anything else and just listen to what I do and to the sounds that I'm making. But in the long run, a composer has to think that they are writing it for themselves. You are the audience as the composer, and then your music will communicate. Now, in a conservatoire environment, it is ideal to try things out this way. So, at the RNCM, there are up to 1,000 performing musicians who are all playing music. They all want to perform all the time. They are here to perform. They are here to hopefully make a profession as performers. In the composition department, which at the moment has about 45 students, the composers are there to write for the performers. So I want to talk about some of the opportunities that composers have to work with performers. Because I think composers learn most from performers. A composer might learn from any great composer in the past or the present. A composer might learn from their teacher. A composer might learn from fellow composers, their peers, their contemporaries they're working with at the time. But most of all, I think a composer will learn from the people who are actually blowing and bowing and scraping and singing and banging or whatever they do to make a musical sound. So if I want to write for a flautist, I'm writing for a flautist. I'm not writing for a flute. A flute is just a long thing made of metal with holes in it. It'll do nothing unless somebody picks it up and starts blowing into it. And that is the important thing. Many of you, I'm sure, use music software. I use music software to create a clear and legible score. It's what we have to do these days. But I would not actually compose on it to try and think of the ideas on it, because I can see a flute. I can press a key down and it makes a sound like a flute. That is not the way you would actually play a flute. You would put the instrument to your mouth and you would blow. And there would be certain things that would be easier, certain things that would be more difficult. So, for example, if we stay with the flute for the time being, I could be talking about any other instrument. If I want to make a very soft sound, very high up, and hold a note for a long time, that is actually quite difficult on a flute. And to write pianissimo, very soft entry, and keep that note going. For me, that's exciting. I could easily just play a high flute sound on a keyboard and you'd get it. You would get the flute sound. But that is not what it's about. It's about asking a player to make an effort, to think about what they're doing, and to have a certain element of passion and commitment in trying to get the softest, most beautiful sound on that high note. And that's where one learns an enormous amount. Similarly, with any instrument, any voice, limitations are exciting. The fact that the piano, when you play the note always dies away. And you can probably change things in other ways, and you can make the piano sound carry on, which is fine as well. But I think in any situation, one must respect and love what players do. So you're always writing for players, either solo or in small groups or in large groups. And here at the RNCM, we want composers to have fantastic relationships with performers. One of my favorite aspects of my job here is what you might call blind musical dating, where composers and performers come together and work together. And composing is actually a very lonely profession. Most composers have to somehow like spending time by themselves, thinking, trying to think of notes, trying to think of how they're going to sound at a piano or at a computer or at a desk by themselves, maybe several hours a day for weeks or months at a time. If you don't like that, there are other professions that are easier and less lonesome. But at the RNCM, we try and increase the social aspect of composing. So, for example, there are constant composer labs where any composer, any composition student, every few weeks, if they want to try a piece out, or half a piece, or a few bars, or a section of a piece, they can bring it along to these labs that we organize, where there'll be a group of players there. And so they can listen to them, and those labs will get recorded, and then they can take them back to their teacher and talk about how the music's progressing. We would like to think that all pieces here at the RNCM will get performed, and that's right up to the largest combinations. Quite uniquely, and I've done a lot of teaching, I've travelled many places and seen other composition departments. We are unique here at the Royal Northern College of Music that we have regular orchestral concerts of student works. They happen once a term, and students get the opportunity to write for a symphony orchestra, which the pieces get rehearsed and then played in a public concert. Over the years, these concerts have happened in usually October, January, and April or May. So if you're a student and if you're an aspiring orchestral composer, RNCM is the best possible place you could come to. Many other large ensembles play student works. We have a wind ensemble, we have a brass band, we have choirs, we have mixed new music ensembles, many festivals. Many composers have been here recently. The biggest names: Harrison Birtwistle, James Macmillan, Judith Weir, Mark Anthony Turnage, George Benjamin. I could carry on spouting many more names. And in those festivals of their music, there is always a student work in every concert. And there are other festivals as well. That we have a chamber music festival. There'll be a saxophone day, a festival of brass, which is one of the best brass festivals worldwide. In all these areas, we put student works in. And so students, if they're writing for something, they want to be writing for a particular goal. So they have to finish the piece, and then it gets rehearsed and performed and recorded. And all that process, as well as it includes the social aspect of composing that I mentioned earlier. So I want to talk a little bit about the day-to-day life at the RNCM, what a typical composer might do. I mean, there are undergraduates and postgraduates, and also PhD students. An undergraduate will have a composition lesson a week, one-to-one. They will have a techniques of composition class. This all goes alongside the academic course that all students do now. We have a general seminar, which happens on a Wednesday afternoon, where I will sometimes bring in professional musicians to talk about their work, or students will talk about their own work. Performers might perform. Projects might come to fruition in this Wednesday afternoon time. There are the composer labs I mentioned. There are master classes. We have an international chairing composition, Anders Hilborg, who comes in a couple of times a year and works with students, and I try and get other people to come in as well. Of course, I'm very mindful of the fact that we like to fill your diaries as much as we dare, but at the same time, we realize that you've got to be writing at the same time. Postgraduate composers will have 2 teachers. They have a lesson a week, but that's split between 2 teachers. They will, instead of the techniques classes, they will have another seminar, which happens on a Monday afternoon, a particular postgraduate seminar where their work is looked at in closer detail. So what's really important now is that in the composition community is that we do not have a house style. It's a very 20th century old-fashioned way to think of that if you go to this particular university, that's what they like to be written there. Oh, the staff at that particular music college university, they like a certain sort of approach or aesthetic that is somehow approved by the faculty. We don't do that. Having said that composers learn most off players, I think they then learn an enormous amount off their contemporaries. There may be a student who is very interested in the cutting edge of exploring amazing new complex playing techniques, and there'll be somebody else who is perhaps more traditional, who perhaps wants to look at music inspired by film music or TV music or the choral tradition. We can put all these composers together and they can learn amazingly from each other. And what's fascinating for me is to see how composers change and develop during their time here. Undergraduates are here for 4 years, but there is a 3-year fast-track alternative, and postgraduates are here for either 1 year or 2 years. Let me now talk a little bit about the audition process, which tends to happen in November, and it will be either Skype or live, or Skype or Zoom or live, in that what we want to find out from any person we don't know who wants to be a composer or who wants to compose is their passion for it. I mean, there are not 9-to-5 jobs in composition. You're not going to go into an office and compose music and then get paid a salary for it. That used to happen possibly in communist Soviet Union and certain places if you were very, very, very lucky. And I wouldn't have thought the working conditions there would have been that wonderful. What composers have to think about is a kind of portfolio career. I'm saying this now so a certain realism can enter people's minds, as well as all the wonderful thoughts they may have for changing the world with their music. So here in Manchester, at the RNCM, we try and combine idealism with practicality. And in the audition, what we want to really get across, though, is that what we want you to get across is that you really, really, really want to do it. So if you're 17, 18 years old and you're just finishing off school or college, what we don't particularly want to hear about is the piece you're studying for A-level. Because granted, we can look at the A-level syllabuses and we can find out what you're studying for A-level. What we want is the passion that you have beyond all of that. So, for example, if I know, for example, that one of Shostakovich's quartets, I think number 8, was on the A-level syllabus a few years ago. What I'd be interested in is if then any candidate would listen to some of Shostakovich's other quartets, or quartets by other composers in the 20th century at the same time and following Shostakovich, because they have a thirst and a passion for the string quartet and want to write string quartets. So it's having this sense of vision and looking beyond what you have to do, because it's a very overcrowded area, composing. A lot of people would like to think they're composers, they want to be composers, but the 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration is not so far off the mark. I hate to be off-putting, but it's the fruits of one's labor when it's done are worth having. They are, the rewards one reaps are enormous. So in the audition situation, you apply by the 1st of October, and in that application, you'll have had some references, you'll be giving a personal statement, you will send in 3 pieces, probably, usually 3. Don't send in a lot more, we haven't got time to look at them all, and I think we need 3 to see that you really are writing different pieces and there's a contrast. Don't send in 3 piano pieces or 3 jazz arrangements. We're not seeing enough variety then. I realize that some of you come from societies where you get more of a chance to get your pieces performed. So some of you might be able to send in live recordings, some of you might have to send in Sibelius sounds or general sound files. That's fine, but we do ask definitely for PDFs of scores. We do need to see scores and, if possible, hear recordings. So we have to have a look and see where you're at compositionally. So this has to be done by the end of September, 1st of October. We gather in all the applications and we then sift through them. We want to see as many people as possible. So if we're in any doubt, we'll still come and see you. And so then, following that, we will then invite you, hopefully, to come for an audition, which will happen usually in the second half of November. And the auditions, depending whether they're live or online, you will be given a a piece of music to look at, to talk about. It could be anything from the 20th century. For postgrad auditions, we like to find a piece of more contemporary music. So we just like you to observe what you notice about what the composer might be doing with their material, aspects of orchestration, unusual things about the piece, where it might have come from, who might have written it. We ask you to do that, and for undergraduates, we give a very simple harmonization, just about 3 or 4 bars of a melody. And you get half an hour to do the harmonization and the musical analysis. And for the postgraduates, it's just a musical analysis. You then come into the audition, which will be with myself and another member of the composition staff. We will have a look at the work you've done in the last half hour. And then we will ask you about your music and your passions in life, and we want you to communicate your incredible 100% commitment towards changing the world with your amazing music that you're going to be writing over the next few years. And then we give it a little bit of time at the end of the audition for you to ask us anything you like. Following that, there are 3 possibilities. 1, congratulations, you've got a place, we'd love you to come. 2, I'm sorry, but not this time. We couldn't perhaps offer you a place, we're happy to give feedback. Or 3, we can offer you a reserve place. So a reserve place means that you are up to the level, but you're maybe not quite on the top level that we've offered our definite places to, but if something happened and we were able to offer a few more places, we would still be happy to have you in. And many of our reserve students have gone on and they've become as successful as any students we've had. So this will happen quite soon afterwards, within a few days of the audition. And just to mention about student successes, because we do have a fantastic track record, students who have been to the RNCM. Many of them have had pieces played by some of the leading orchestras in the country. We have some who have gone on to work in the film and the theatre industry. One composer, a PhD student quite recently, was the composer of the Oscar-winning Best Short Film a couple of years ago. It won a Hollywood Oscar. We've had quite a few composers have pieces performed at the BBC Proms, the BBC Singers, London Symphony Orchestra, Halle Orchestra, BBC Philharmonic Orchestra, orchestras abroad, the National Theatre. The list goes on and on and on. So, and we are here to look after you. We want you to succeed. We want you to be. We want you to do the place proud, and we are here to help. So I hope to meet you all very soon, and any questions you can email me, or I believe on this online audition day you can ask me straight away and I can answer them. And to conclude, if you have any questions about the School of Composition, please join me in the online panel that will be happening later today. Thank you very much.